And this is the time when you need to make that comeback. You need to make it happen. And that's why we are here for you. It is part one of the week 3 preview here on the Audible, the footballguys.com podcast. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom with Miami and Jacksonville. And you've got the beard versus the mustache. They're talking smack on social networking, and fantasy GMs are just like, can we get some play here from the Miami side at least? Jacksonville side has some excitement. The Miami side has some headaches, Bloom. So if you're a fantasy GM with any of these Dolphins assets, and we can name them all, you're probably benching them. Maybe you're playing them. I don't know. I'm not trusting my Dolphins. I don't care if it's Gesicki or Williams or anybody.
Right. Trust and Dolphins don't necessarily go in the same sentence. We had that stretch last year in the second half of the year where that might have been true. First, Cease, let's just acknowledge Miami versus Jacksonville on a Thursday night sounds a lot more exciting and entertaining than it would have a few weeks ago. So
that's better than Jets and Broncos next week.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's a good thing there's gambling for people in fantasy, for people to tune into that one. So, we saw the pretty good feisty Fitz magic last week against the Bills. They didn't go away. If Preston Williams hadn't dropped that fourth down touchdown, it could have been a real interesting game at the end there. And Fitzpatrick's putting up numbers. So 2 quarterback superflex leagues, DFS, because Jacksonville's defense is pretty good versus the run. Remember, they held back Jonathan Taylor after Marlon Mack went out, and they did a really good job, the best job they've basically ever done against Derrick Henry last week. Miami doesn't have much of a running game anyway. You have Myles Gaskin as an emergency play. See, what's Jordan Howard at now? Like 13 carries for 11 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jerome Bettis says that's a good line. That's my kind of line. So you're not playing Howard, Matt Breida not getting worked in there. Devontae Parker emerges from last week without hamstring aggravation. Now, Preston Williams has seen the number one corners, also has looked a bit unsteady at times. So maybe Devontae Parker here, he has been the number one target with Preston Williams last week not doing much and having that drop. You also have Isaiah Ford, Matt Waldman favorite, deep leagues. Let's watch him. But the big name is, of course, Mike Gesicki, who had a good game and then really put some extra mustard on in garbage time. And I think that you're seeing a budding connection there. So that's the player I'm most excited to watch on the Miami side, most excited to put into my lineup on Thursday night.
Exciting is what describes Jacksonville. So let's discuss that. I know fantasy jams are like, can Laviska be designated a running back? Like, okay, well, whatever. But Laviska designated a what the heck flex, at least. James Robinson is a running back too, maybe more against this Dolphins defense. And we appreciate Brian Flores and respect the work he's doing, but it's still a work in progress there for that Dolphins defense. So you're more excited about these Jacksonville assets, Robinson, Chenault, Shark, and Gardner Minshew.
Yes, excited to watch this offense. Excited to see what Jay Gruden has cooked up and how Gardner Minshew is going to execute it. And again, because Jacksonville's pass defense, excited to watch C.J. Henderson, but their pass defense is vulnerable. Ryan Fitzpatrick will be aggressive, which this could be a secret shootout here, Cease, between these two quarterbacks who certainly are never shy about testing the defense. Minshew, although Minshew's been playing well within himself and within the play designs. So Minshew's a streamer this week. Miami's corners are banged up. Xavier Howard's banged up. Byron Jones left the game last week. So, yeah. And he spreads it around. So you have DJ Chark. Consider Chark your wide receiver 3 flex. He has been a low ceiling player so far because he only has 7 targets, but he's caught all 7. I think 109 yards and a touchdown on those 7 targets. He's good. It's just going to take one of these games that he gets more targets. And I know by design they're going to spread it around and Minshew's going to execute the plays and they're going to work. But it isn't like Chark has had an erosion in skills. That's not how we explain his drop-off. So I would keep erring on the side of putting Chark in. Keelan Cole is more that safe play, in the Adam Humphries, Cole Beasley kind of mold where you're going to get 10 points, maybe more if he gets a touchdown. Chenault is more like that from a scoring profile, 10 to 15 point play. But Cease, one of these games, he's going to take one of those touches to the house, Mm-hmm. Every week, there's at least one touch where someone just bounces off of him. It's really, really fun to watch. Laviska Shenault, and he's just a fun guy to put in your lineup. And again, this could become a shootout. This could become a loose, wide open game. So you really like all three of these guys for different reasons, but Chark is the one with the highest priority. And then you have James Robinson. And of course, you're going to play James Robinson as your running back, too. The volume's there, the quality's there, the efficiency's there. We're not going to play either tight end here, but with this offense playing well, with Minshew playing well, with good play calls and play designs, Tyler Eifert and James O'Shaughnessy are both capable of being fantasy relevant. If they don't share the role, they're both healthy now. They both have an injury history, so that'll be something to watch here. I think this game will be something to watch, and better than some of the Sunday games, too.
Sunday's action is maybe not as enticing or exciting as it was certainly last week. However, Monday's here to save us. That's for part 2. But Chicago and Atlanta, the Bears going to win this thing? Fantasy takes aside, Atlanta licking their wounds, coming back from Texas again after blowing another lead. Of course, Chicago feeling good with Mitchell Trubisky. We'll see what they can do on the ground. Tariq Cohen signs that deal and then gets 4 touches, whatever the number was. Yeah. Okay. Bad day for Millers last week. Robinson, shaky, but okay, you're facing Atlanta. The defense is a sieve. What can the Bears do?
Hopefully something. Hopefully a lot. See, has there been a more potentially counterfeit 2-0 team than this 2020 Bears? DeAndre Swift. Yeah. DeAndre Swift dropping that pass after they had to come back from a 17-point deficit in Detroit. And it was Detroit who will find a way to lose. And then they barely lost to the Giants, even though the football gods were delivering them the game over. I'm sorry, barely beat the Giants. And remember, they knocked Saquon Barkley and Sterling Shepard out of that game at home. Still was close. So far from a shoe-in here, but they should be 3-0 coming out of this game, right? You feel lucky playing Trubisky again? I don't know. He didn't do anything for 3 quarters against the Lions. The Giants' defense isn't good. He didn't do much against them. Atlanta's defense isn't good, but how much are we going to trust the matchup here? Because it's not that magic Detroit matchup. I'll tell you who I am going to trust these. David Montgomery. This is the nicest you're going to ever hear me talk about David Montgomery on the show. Well, in the future, maybe this is the default, but he looked good. A la Benny Snell, last week, not so much in week 1, a little bit in week 1, but last week especially, you saw the way that he had reshaped his body, resulting in a better burst, especially on a game-clinching run. Well, they had a lot of trouble clinching that game, but it should have been a game-clinching run. And zigging and zagging on his touchdown reception in this matchup against Atlanta. I like David Montgomery. Allen Robinson. If Allen Robinson doesn't do it this week against Atlanta, then you should be worried. You should be asking yourself, am I going to start him? And that doesn't mean we're going to start, because who else are we going to start from the passing game? Darnell Mooney or, like you said, Tariq Cohen. Here's your extension. Here's 5 touches, 6 touches. Is it going to be Jimmy Graham? Anthony Miller, needs a bigger role. Anthony Miller just needs to be on a different team, different quarterback, different offense. Just remember him in dynasty leagues. So, yes, it should be an Allen Robinson week against the Falcons secondary. If it's not, then we're starting to ask, when are we going to play him? The other thing to keep in mind here is the Bears defense came on last week. It had a good week. So maybe not a runaway game script here. If the Bears defense can keep the game low scoring, that means a more conservative game for Mitchell Trubisky. So the Bears defense could affect the output of the Bears offense.
Well, let's get to the other side of the field in this one in Atlanta. Okay, again, licking their wounds. Julio Jones banged up, so we'll watch that. Fantasy GMs are wondering about Russell Gage, not wondering about Calvin Ridley. Throw him in your lineup in this one. And against those Bears, what are you expecting from Todd Gurley in that ground game?
Well, I'm not expecting much from Gurley, just because, well, I'll put it this way. I'm not starting Gurley if I can help it, because it was tilting last week to see Ito Smith in a goal line. I mean, look, they're ahead most of the game. That should have been a massive Todd Gurley game. That's the ideal Todd Gurley game script. What were they, up 20-0 in the first quarter or something like that? So you saw Todd Gurley not in there in a goal-to-go situation. Well, why did we take Todd Gurley if he's not going to be automatically the first option on? And we know how much trouble the Falcons have had in their red zone offense over the years. How much trouble Julio Jones has had. And that's another one, Cease. Like Allen Robinson, play Julio Jones this week. But if he has another dud, that's a problem. That could be a real problem because he himself, Dr. Gene, is over our shoulder saying the player usually inflates their effectiveness. Well, Julio Jones is saying, I didn't catch that touchdown because of my hamstring. I can't run the way I want to. I think there was another report that the team thinks it's a little worse than he's letting on. So, I wouldn't say bench Julio Jones. The sky is falling. But at the same time, we might be talking more about that next week. And the one thing we haven't talked enough about is Calvin Ridley, the number one wide receiver in fantasy football, and not by a small margin. And Ridley's one of those guys that, kind of like Amari Cooper, you don't want to see the injury seal get broken because then his effectiveness starts to wane a little bit. But for now, if we're drafting today, he's first wide receiver off the board.
Yeah.
I mean, Thomas is hurt. Adams is hurt. I mean, maybe you have an argument for DeAndre Hopkins, but, yeah. And by the way, while we're on the subject, old prospect, what was he, like 23? So those age models, why didn't he come out early? Why isn't he a 21-year-old? When was the breakout year and things like that? And his leaps were unimpressive at the combine. None of it matters. He can play. And Russell Gage can play. Russell Gage can throw passes. So if you're worried about Julio Jones, Russell Gage becomes the guy, maybe to a lesser extent, Hayden Hurst. The other thing we're thinking about here, remember, Matt Ryan, if you get pressure on him, problems. He melts like that Nazi in Raiders of the Lost Ark, So when he melted in the past, it was Austin Hooper. So if you think Quinn and Mac are going to be getting to Ryan, is it maybe a Russell Gage game, maybe a Hayden Hurst game, a game where who's the struggle target without Austin Hooper out there? We'll be watching this. And yeah, if the Falcons lose this, they'll be struggling. Cease, it was painful. I mean, I feel it's funny. I think the Jets fans and the Lions fans are just so numb at this point that you don't feel the ripples of the pain. You might think the Falcons fans are numb from how long it's been since 28-3. No. Last week really hit a nerve. So for that fan base, I hope the team responds this week. So this is an interesting game, even though neither of these teams are going anywhere.
Two things, and I'll have to edit this out, so I'm going to write down the time. One, did you reset your router?
Oh.
Because you're fuzzing out. All of us are in the chat room are like, 6 fuzzing out. So did you reset your router? I texted you, but I don't know if you
I
saw
haven't
that.
had a chance to reset it, yeah.
And two, by mentioning that Indiana Jones villain, this video will get flagged. They have YouTube has an algorithm where they pick up that word and they'll be like, oh, flag it. So yeah, there we go. Anyway, do you want to reset your router now, or is there anything pulling on your machine?
I closed a few tabs. Hold on. Hey, everybody.
Can't be watching videos while we're doing a video. Anyway.
All right.
Oh, you feel good about it, or you want to reset your router? It's fine.
I can't detect whenever I'm slowing down. So if it's continuing to happen, I'll reset the router.
Okay. And you did not when I texted you, or you didn't see the text? Whatever. Okay. Reset it now, and I will BS.
Thanks, everybody. Through. This is how the sausage is made. Love you all.
We used to be able to cut this stuff out, and you would never know. Of course, we just did an audio version. All right, Sig.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Yeah, be right back.
Right back.
I will monologue because that's what I do. And, well, I do that about the Denver Broncos mostly. And then, of course, we're going to get to Los Angeles Rams and Buffalo Bills. But on the Atlanta tip for me, I'm very happy with the Calvin Ridley stock that I have in my fantasy leagues. Not expecting this. I don't think anyone really expected this, but it does take us back to the 90s. I know I'm stuck in the 90s. Hell, almost everything I love is from that era, but it takes me back to when wide receivers took 3 years to get going. And I don't care if it was Herman Moore. I don't care if it was Marvin Harrison. It just took wide receivers time. So if we remember that rule, even in today's league, which is very pass happy, and today's league where they're just filling the air with footballs and they're lighting up the scoreboards through the air, it's still something. And we've been spoiled, right? We've been spoiled by young receivers, rookie receivers that come in and that just splash in the league and that dominate and that look great and all these sorts of things. But there are just times when it takes some time for a receiver to get going. So whenever you see that young prospect and he flashes, don't just think that's him. And I think that's kind of a good rule of thumb, hell, in football and in life, to look at what someone is presenting and know that there could be more there, right? And with Ridley, it was one of those things, like, we all knew. I wasn't expecting this from Calvin Ridley. I was expecting more, but you think with Julio Jones there and all that sort of thing, but you look at what he's doing now and how that's impacting on the field for this team and just the growth that he's made and growth that he's made as a player, it's simply outstanding. So when you think of someone, let's say a Jerry Jeudy, right? Always got Broncos on my mind. You think, okay, rookie season, we'll see what he can do, especially now without Cortland Sutton. But then where's that growth? Where's that development? And you think of these young receivers like that have, constantly basically done that. And it's not Bloom's texting me that he's sorry. Yeah, it's fine. This will all hit the cutting room floor. But as we sit here and we discuss everything that's going on, just remember, sometimes it takes wide receivers time to break out. I think tight end is the same thing. Look at what we've seen with Darren Waller. I mean, that was a guy who just learning the position, and even Logan Thomas to a smaller extent, because, obviously Waller last year in that 1,000-yard season, but it's just a position, tight end specifically, where you're learning two things. You're learning the blocking scheme and you're learning running routes. And when you're a young player, you don't know how to do those things yet. It will take some time. So again, a guy like Calvin Ridley, who's next year's Calvin Ridley, like those sorts of things. Like, we have to see if Corey Davis, can continue on and kind of make that way and explode onto the scene and all those sorts of things as he'll continue to grow. So we have big hopes and dreams and aspirations for these young players, but also just recognize that sometimes it does take some time. And sometimes it just isn't as instant as we want it today, because it is a microwave society. It is, we want everything now. We want results now. And if a guy can't play now, then he sucks unless he doesn't. Or if a guy just plays to a certain level, because obviously Calvin Ridley never sucked, but you just thought, oh, okay, well, that's kind of who he is and that's where he'll be. No. There's more there. I'll harken back to Emmanuel Sanders, because when he came to the Denver Broncos, he didn't have a 1,000-yard season. Hell, he didn't have a 100-yard game in 4 seasons with the Steelers. And the Steelers are one of those teams. Gone are the days of Limas Swede and Troy Edwards, where they couldn't pick a wide receiver to save their life. Now we see what they've done with those receivers. So always remember, it takes some time. Take some time to get Bloom back. Hey, Bloom.
Rehabilitated.
And just good to go. All right.
Do you want me to redo
No.
Hi, everybody.
That's fine. Hey,
we love
everybody. Yeah, it's awesome. There's still a little pull or a lag, but whatever. Just we'll monitor it.
Okay.
And we'll continue on with the Rams and Buffalo, LA Rams side of things, and injuries are abounding on that side, at least when it comes to the running back position. And we wonder every week with Sean McVay, okay, who's it going to be? It's going to be 3 of them, although Cam Akers is day-to-day with a rib injury. Malcolm Brown had surgery on the finger, but they say he's expected to play in week 3. Of course, Darrell Henderson kicking around out there as well, but that's not the only complication, Bloom. Complications abound at the other positions for the Rams, too. This one's going to be, I think, an underrated game on Sunday. You're thinking Rams, Bills, like, no. The way Josh Allen's playing, we'll get to in a little bit. But the Rams side, very interesting, very problematic if you don't pick right.
2-2-0 teams. So that's fun in and of itself. Jared Goff, Rams offense. Congratulations. You had a nice start, putting 2019 behind you. You played 2 NFC least defenses. Okay. It was the Eagles and the Cowboys. Now it's the Bills. A little stiffer test. It'll probably take the Rams out of their comfort zone. I'm not necessarily going back to Jared Goff here. Robert Woods is going to get Tre'Davious White. I don't like that. It should be a Cooper Kupp game. Cooper Kupp hasn't done anything yet this year to make you want to take a chance on him, though. Tyler Higbee has. Tyler Higbee reminded you last week why you just play him. You get that 3-touchdown game. A lot of those plays were by design. That was easy. But it does revolve around the backfield here. Van Jefferson's lurking. That's another reason to not be as excited about Cooper Kupp, because if Tre'Davious White takes away Robert Woods, it could be Van Jefferson. It could be Tyler Higbee. But it is the backfield. I think this is going to be a pain for us. But this week, slight clarity, little clarity. Darrell Henderson's the healthiest. Darrell Henderson comes into the year the most banged up. By week 3, he's the healthiest.
Yep.
This is 2020. So he showed the burst. Could have had a touchdown on a reception, a ball that they didn't hook up Goff and Henderson, so it could have been an even better week for him last week. So I think he's certainly a what the heck flex, really more kind of an upside running back too in this one. But again, for me, the story is how will this Rams offense look against the Bills defense, not the Eagles defense, not the Cowboys defense in 2020.
K1 made it, but K1, you missed some action. This will be one of those legends, Bloom, because and it won't be on the audio version. Although if you're listening to this now, you're like, "What are you talking about?" Were you there the time when Sig had to bow out for a little bit and come back to the show? Yeah. So we have these from time to time. From time to time, Josh Allen finding his targets. That's a horrible segue, but Josh Allen's on fire. Early MVP candidate. Him or Russell Wilson, obviously, and R-Dub probably would get it, but Josh Allen playing at an incredibly high level. So you're looking at those targets. You're looking at Cole Beasley in that deep flex play, Smokey Brown as a wide receiver 3, Stephon Diggs, wide receiver 2 with upside. Dawson Knox a little bit banged up, but still, you're looking at those 3 wide receivers thinking good things. You're looking at those 2 running backs and thinking maybe bad things, or thinking, how's it going to sort out? But as defenses adjust to Josh Allen, that's going to shift the pendulum back to those running backs if the Bills, follow football 101.
And again, Cease, very century-based game plan preview here, because it's like, okay, Josh Allen did it against the Jets and the Dolphins. The Rams are a little tougher than the Jets and the Dolphins. Aaron Donald says, yeah, your life's not going to be so easy for you in this one. Still going to stick with Josh Allen. I mean, maybe he would go off the board. He would certainly go off the board as a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And that understates how well he's played. It's just how well some of the top quarterbacks. Do you see more Moss and Singletary? There's just what the heck flexes. The talent's there, the quality of the offense is there, the quality of the play design and the play calls are there. However, it's a Josh Allen offense. Does that balance out a little bit, as you said? Sees the pendulum swinging back, the Rams coming in and maybe trying to force Josh Allen to run more, scramble more, hand the ball off more. I think the order of the receivers is Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley. However, Jalen Ramsey is lurking in this matchup. So Jalen Ramsey, and I don't have the numbers. I don't know how often Diggs and Ramsey have faced off when Diggs was in Minnesota. But certainly that gives you a little nudge as a what the heck flex to look at Cole Beasley, to look at John Brown as your wide receiver 3 flex. Remember, he should have had 2 touchdowns in week 1. Dawson Knox is also banged up with a concussion. So that's another reason to maybe like John Brown, like Cole Beasley, even Devin Singletary, who has, I think, 7 receptions already this year. So it isn't like he has not lived up to the promise of being more involved in the passing game. But the promise here is the fun of a 2-0 matchup and 2 fan bases that should be excited about their team.
They should be really excited about the team and enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. Could lead to a deep postseason run. Enjoy Washington football team at Cleveland Browns. Okay, there's some interest here. Antonio Gibson breakout. Is it this week? Be damned to everyone else. You're already starting Terry McLaurin anyway. Right? But I really want to know, is the Antonio Gibson breakout this week? Because we've seen the flashes. He certainly can create his own space, Bloom. Love watching him play. Just want to see a little more.
Yeah, you see the trust developing, gets the goal line carry that he converts, leads the backfield in touches last week. Cleveland's defense is pretty stout versus the run. They corralled Joe Mixon last week. But you also have an element here of how the game script goes. So in some ways, both sides of this matchup are going to hinge on how the Washington defensive line does against the Cleveland offensive line and whether Cleveland can do their thing on offense. But if Washington's defensive line is dominant in the trenches, then that sets up even more of an Antonio Gibson game script. Otherwise, there's not much nuance here. Terry McLaurin, what he did last week reminds us, you just don't bench Terry McLaurin. You never know when you're leaving a big game on your bench if you do that. He's that good. And Steven Sims, even Logan Thomas, and I'm happy that Logan Thomas is retaining some fantasy relevance, but when you're starting Sims, you're starting Thomas, you're starting Dwayne Haskins, and Haskins still one of the 2 or 3 worst quarterbacks. I guess with Driscoll and Lawrence out there, there's competition down in the 30s among starting quarterbacks on any given week. But Haskins isn't going to create fantasy overachievers for us. Cleveland, happy to get a win. By the way, Denzel Ward on Terry McLaurin is going to be fun to watch. And Cleveland's defense is their defensive line. Remember, Myles Garrett, Sheldon Richardson, they're going to be having those jailbreak moments against Washington's offensive line the same way they did against Cincinnati's offensive line. But Cease, Washington is tied for first in the division. Dallas is facing Seattle. Washington could move into first place. If they can win this game, this is a big game for Washington football team.
Yeah, good game, big game. We'll see what they can do against those Browns. And then the Browns, what can they do against a better pass rush? The key for Baker Mayfield was always just keep him clean, right? And we saw that last week against Cincinnati. He's out there, he's dealing, right? Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, they're all going to get after you, Baker the baby maker. So what do? Do you latch on to Jarvis Landry, right? We talked about him and shut him down. Yeah. Are you going to throw it up for Odell Beckham Jr.? Are you going to even have time? What about Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb? Are you just going to try to soften them up with the run, draw play, screen passes? It's football 101. It's how you slow down a pass rush. How will the Browns approach this? Because Baker Mayfield looks good when he's facing awful defenses. Washington doesn't have an awful defense.
Right. Well, at least not an awful defensive line. And they've got some guys like Kevin Pierre-Louis is really coming on. I think he was PFF secret superstar for them in week 2, an inside linebacker. But you do look at this entire outlook of the Cleveland offense based on how you think that matchup's going to go in the trenches. And here you have this Washington defensive line. Now, since we have the Goofus and Gallant, right? Baker Mayfield. I think that an analogy you would use here, we've done bad jazz for the Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. The Baker Mayfield, it's like we saw in week 2 when the offense is working, when the run is established, he's like Schwarzenegger, he's the action hero being parachuted in and just taking everybody out on the first shot, But whenever he's not getting the offense working around him, it's like Tropic Thunder. It's like we're supposed to be action heroes, but we're just actors. Our guns don't actually work. Baker Mayfield doesn't make those plays come alive whenever the offense isn't working, whenever the play action isn't being honored, whenever everything isn't in that structure for him. So you could really see a wide range of outcomes here, and see even down to the running backs, right? You think they're going to establish the run. You think they're going to keep this game on track. And also Cleveland's defense will do enough to slow down Washington. It's a Nick Chubb game. Nick Chubb's going to get his 20 carries. And Nick Chubb, oh, man. It was fun to watch him on Thursday night because it just reminds you that the first guy never takes him down. Never. Even more than Derrick Henry, honestly. The first guy never takes him down. And that just wears you out. But if you think Washington's defensive line is going to put their stamp on this game, then it's more of a Kareem Hunt game. It's a game where they might be trailing in the second half. It's a game where if that run is getting stonewalled and they're putting Baker Mayfield in 3rd and 8s and 3rd and 7s, then maybe you're passing more to Kareem Hunt. Maybe you're running more of the mode of the offense with Kareem Hunt. Beckham, you're probably going to play him just because there's no cornerback on Washington that can check him. So you just need one of those play action passes deep to connect, and you were happy to play him. The volume's going to be low, so there's a margin of error. But again, with Landry, with Austin Hooper, you don't have Austin Hooper on your roster anymore. Let's say with Jarvis Landry, if high volume passing game for Baker Mayfield, unless it's a shootout because the other team's offense is so good, chances are it's a struggle game for Baker Mayfield. So again, this is one of those times where I'm thinking, when are we going to want to play Jarvis Landry? Probably not this week. And I think we're just going to find out, Cease. Was it that Cleveland's offense is getting online, on track, and can create some good outcomes most weeks? Or was it just Cincinnati's defense is that bad, and that's still not going to be the norm for this team?
Right. So you're bringing up Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Yeah. I'm thinking of the old Looney Tunes where the guy's got the frog that will dance for him.
Hello, my baby.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my
hello, my
and
honey.
Then when he shows other people, the frog's just
right. The frog. That's a beautiful cartoon, by the way.
That's
talk about stories that resonate through time. Yep. I found the most amazing magical thing, but when I try to show people, the magic goes away.
Yeah, that's Baker Mayfield.
That is, yeah. Right. right? It also reminds me of a great Frank Zappa song, one of my favorite Frank Zappa songs. It's called "It Just Might Be a One-Shot Deal." It's got one of the best steel guitar solos. I love the steel guitar. It aches. It pulls at your soul. A good steel, like a melancholy steel guitar. And the lyrics of the song are all about a frog that comes up and basically dumps some dirt out on the floor, and the forest grows up, and the whole world starts right in front of your eyes from this magic frog. So there's another magic frog for you. They actually had, Warner Brothers actually had that frog as like their symbol on their network, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but the key, the song is, you can be scared when it gets too real, but you should be digging it while it's happening, because it just might be a one-shot deal. So
yeah,
that's
that is your favorite song. You've quoted that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's all about mushrooms, man. Go back and look at the history
right.
And
Aliens.
and symbolism of mushrooms. There's mushroom symbolism in everything.
The Smurfs. La 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 la.
Yeah, everything. Let's crack that open. Let's move on. Nah, that's a different show. Another podcast. Tennessee and Minnesota. We'll talk about Derrick Henry, right? And then who's healthy? Who's healthy? Oh, well, Jonnu Smith's healthy. Okay, cool. They're going to smash with Derrick Henry always. But Ryan Tannehill's coming off a 4-touchdown game, and I remember last week telling someone on Twitter, and I think it was a Corey Davis question, Corey Davis or someone else, and I was like, yeah, but Tannehill, I'm not expecting a lot. And then he has his third career 4-touchdown game. But now you have injury concerns with Davis. You have injury concerns with A.J. Brown. It's Minnesota. Well, they're certainly not playing well. So how does that make you feel about your Tennessee assets?
You should feel good, Cease. It's week 3. Usually week 4, week 5 is our prime trap game week. This feels like a trap game, though. I have to say it because my intuition is telling me this feels like a trap game. But why does it feel like a trap game? Because Tennessee's offense has been so good, and Minnesota's defense has been so bad, and Minnesota's offense has been so bad too. So you just expect Tennessee, that highly efficient offense. Again, we have to say mwah to the Arthur Smith play calls and the Ryan Tannehill execution. Even without our A.J. Brown last week, it was working. Tannehill's dealing. Tannehill's a quarterback 1. Should have always been drafted as a quarterback 1. Certainly against this defense, you want to put him there. Henry, Denver and Jacksonville did a valiant job against him. But this Minnesota defense is dragging themselves in after Jonathan Taylor stomped on their faces. I don't think we're going to see A.J. Brown in this one. So against this secondary, that does make you like Corey Davis a little bit. Remember, T.Y. Hilton didn't do much last week, but he had a 45 or so yard touchdown that he dropped. So it could be there for Corey Davis. Adam Humphries, a little safer. Maybe not the ceiling of Corey Davis, but a higher floor, and you don't have the injury worries if you're looking to take advantage of this matchup. But we know who we really want to put in there. Jonnu. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jonnu Smith is basically their number 1 receiver without A.J. Brown. And we saw Mo Alley Cox rampage and ransack this defense last week. They're going to see Jonnu Smith doing that. Minnesota's defense is drowning right now. And this isn't a life preserver, Cease. This is a big old Derrick Henry size weight.
Yep, this is the shark in the water. We're going to need a bigger boat, something. We're going to need a new coach or a new offense coordinator. I have no idea. Minnesota, what in the hell? Like, seriously. Felt good about this team entering the year, and then they're just in shambles. It's not just Stephon Diggs missing.
No.
Like, it's all over the field. It's on both sides of the ball. So, anyway, we'll talk about what they've got. We're excited by the talent they have. They do have talented players, Bloom, but does it come together, especially against a team like Tennessee that'll just kind of, put the pressure on you with their running game and with their defense?
Tennessee's defense hasn't been that good. Cease, you watched them Monday night, week 1.
Right.
Denver maybe should have been able to do a little bit more. But last week, and again, all credit to Jacksonville, to Minshew, to Jay Gruden, to everybody there doing their jobs. But Tennessee's defense wasn't really a problem last week for Jacksonville. So if this is a get-on-track game, at least you have an opponent that you can picture that happening. It's just miserable, though. And see, you're right. Really, we have to start asking, when do you fire Mike Zimmer? Because when you see a team not just not look competitive, but really don't even look that distressed about it, that's when you have to start asking questions about leadership. And that comes back to the head coach. So, yeah, we want to see Minnesota show some fight. We want to see Minnesota show some signs of life. From a fantasy perspective, you're playing Dalvin Cook because at least he's getting garbage time touchdowns. And you're playing Adam Thielen, But again, a la Al Robinson, if he doesn't do it this week, now you're thinking before you start him. Now you're wondering what you have because he didn't get the garbage time touchdown last week like he did in week 1 to put him over the top. Tennessee shouldn't have anybody that can check Adam Thielen in this one, although Indy didn't really have any shutdown corners last week either. See, it's another name that we should bring up. And no, you're not playing Irv Smith or Justin Jefferson or Olabisi Johnson or anybody like that, Kyle Rudolph. See, the name we got to be bringing up here is Gary Kubiak. You know, I think that what do you got, man? I mean, they're trying to just stay in their home mode of their offense, and they're getting run over. So something, you got those scripted plays, something. This team has to score. I think that we're looking at, Minnesota's offense is drowning. Also, Minnesota as a team is drowning right now.
Yeah, and next up is Las Vegas at New England. That one's a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cam, but also thank you, Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Like for slinging it around, those 2 rookie receivers. I know the chat room's been going nuts about Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, and while I am nuts about Jerry Jeudy, Hamler maybe not as much. But Brian Edwards and Henry Ruggs look pretty damn good. Now you toss out Darren Waller there at the tight end position. Oh, yeah, you could smash everything with Josh Jacobs running the rock. Okay, Vegas, what kind of fight did they put up, and how can you take advantage of that in your fantasy league against the Patriots?
Yeah, we saw the Raiders looking like a really good offense, and they looked better against the Panthers than Tampa and Tom Brady did. Now, and they look better against the Saints, vastly better than Brady looked against the Saints. So in the math here, I guess that transitive property goes to how they did compared to Tom Brady, and pretty good. Enough that Carr could even be a streamer here. Now, is New England's defense good? Like the first week that we saw them made Ryan Fitzpatrick look bad? Or is it that they have vulnerabilities? Or were those vulnerabilities just shown because it's Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson's going to make every defense look like that this year? So these are some things to think about. But the Raiders don't have to rely on their receivers. So if J.C. Jackson and Stephon Gilmore are doing their thing on Ruggs and Edwards, and Ruggs not being 100%, I think Ruggs at this point is kind of wait until he goes off on your bench and then be happy that you have him, and then you're going to trust him. And he will have opportunities to do that if he gets back to 100%. There's a small chance, I think, that because sports cars cease, right? I mean, as soon as things get off just a little bit, right, it's hard to get them back to full speed until maybe the next season. So we'll watch that. But it's all about Darren Waller. Why isn't this another 15 catch kind of game for Darren Waller? Why would you go away from Darren Waller? No matter what the Saints did, Waller had an answer. The Raiders had an answer. So that makes sense for them to continue to go to Waller, not go at the corners. And then, a lot of Jacobs. You hate seeing Jacobs, speaking of breaking the injury seal, Cease. You hate seeing him on the sideline already getting his hamstring worked on. I just can't help but think of not sports cars, but Cadillac with Gruden and these running backs. He's going to do it. I mean, Josh Jacobs might just be built more for it than a Cadillac was, but Gruden's going to use Jacobs with absolutely no regard for his long-term health, which is great for fantasy football in the short term until he gets hurt. And even last year, remember, with a broken shoulder, he came out and played well. But eventually they said, okay, a broken shoulder, maybe that's a little too much. Right. You've already taken 100 hits with a broken shoulder. With that offensive line, though, you have to like the ability for this offense to be a top offense, even though it's going to go through Waller and it's going to go through Jacobs at this point with Ruggs not being healthy. But this is a really interesting matchup. And see, so we can look at the NFC, and our friend of the show, Eric Stoner, said, really, the NFC West could send 4 teams through to the playoffs, right? I mean, what team in any of those other divisions deserves to go to the playoffs except the division winner? None of them, right? None of them. But on the AFC side, you might have 8 or 9 playoff deserving teams. Even with the extra spot, you might see someone left home because you've got Buffalo and New England. You've got Indy, and you've got Tennessee. You've got the Steelers. You've got the Ravens. You've got, of course, the Chiefs, but the Chargers and the Raiders are both looking like interesting teams, especially with Justin Herbert starting. So the Raiders are complicating things, and maybe it's that the Saints defense is eroding more than we think, but maybe it's that the Raiders are finally going to put this offense together because they have the offensive line and offensive mind to do it. This is a great popcorn matchup from the early games.
Yeah, this is a fantastic matchup from the early games. And when you think about Cadillac, did you see the graphic on Monday night they had, Bloom? About Josh Jacobs?
Yeah, over Marcus and Bo Jackson.
No, not that one, but the one where it's like, at Alabama, how many times did he go over 20 carries? 0.
Saved him, yeah.
And then
thanks, Nick Saban. Can we ever say Nick Saban saved a player for the pros? Wow.
Not really.
How does that happen?
Not really, but yeah. So, okay. It's the Cadillac Williams treatment. Josh Jacobs built a little bit more like a tank than a Cadillac. I would say an original Hummer. There's someone around here in Roxborough that has like an original Hummer.
What do they call it? It's like a Merv.
And it's an actual military vehicle. Like H2s are just Yukon chassis.
Right.
So every time I see a guy in H2, or God forbid an H3, like Trevor Siemian had an H3. I was like, oh my God.
That says a lot.
That's like a Blazer chassis. It's like it's not even an off-road vehicle. It's something you'd never want to take off-road. But anyway, so there's our car talk for today. We're getting car talk in. I know people wanted us to talk Odell Beckham Jr. and Sex God Pod, but that's YouTube. You think that YouTube doesn't like the Indiana Jones villain? Well, they really wouldn't like that.
Plays big in Germany, sees.
Let's talk about New England's side of things and just our positive vibes and everything going out to James White. You see his teammates as well. So now we talk about the things that don't matter, but it's fantasy football. So you look at this Patriots backfield, you look at the matchup against the Raiders, you look at the wide receivers, you're still kind of scratching your head, right? Okay, there's no tight end of note. But how's Cam going to get it done? Lots of himself.
Yeah, right. See, you got the shirt on, man. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, Cam.
Although he's doing Wakanda Forever this
year. Of course.
So.
No, it's true. Let's just rewind. Not going to go on for too long, Cease. It's kind of more of a Thursday night thing, but I want to do it. I just want to get it off my chest. Speaking of chest.
Say it with your chest.
Let's stop pretending that we don't know why Cam Newton was a free agent for so long. Okay? Wow, he's so good. Yeah. When he's healthy, he's that good. And teams take chances on injured players before they can do a physical. So that's not why he was out there for so long. But really, I set this up, Cease, as we talked about so many times in the offseason. Wouldn't it be great to see Cam Newton take the center stage and show the football world again that he's one of the best, and he is one of the best? And let's give a nod to Josh McDaniels, because Josh McDaniels has obviously set him up for success. But, Cease, I want to say this like loud and clear so people can hear it, okay? If you watched Cam Newton against Seattle, that was ideal pocket passer, progression, structured passing. Cam Newton is a good pocket passer. Against the Seahawks, he was magnificent. He was artistic, you know? I mean, the game that he played, like, please, Cam Newton is one of the best quarterbacks of this era, which makes him one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. All right? Congratulations, New England. You got him. Congratulations if you got him on your fantasy team. He's in your lineup. He might break the record for rushing touchdowns this year, Cease. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to do it. Because New England, isn't it beautiful? Cease, as much as we've hated Belichick backfields and all that stuff, the thing about McDaniels and Belichick is they're like, well, this works, so we're going to do it, right? It's kind of simple. And Jeff Howe, I think it was, that pointed out on The Athletic, look, say what you will about the play call on the last play of the game, but the Patriots were 6 of 6 on that play call in that game. And, of course, one of the 6 was the fake and the pass, and maybe you would say, oh, they should have passed it. But isn't that perfect symmetry, again, Cease? Seattle loses a Super Bowl against New England because they go against the tendency. They go against what's working or what would be the obvious call. And New England loses an epic game to Seattle because they stick with the obvious call, which means there's never one right answer, okay? But the point is, the New England's guys played better. I'm sorry, Seattle's guys played better than New England's on that last play. It was just execution, really. And even Cam said if he could have decided to cut it back and just run it Puna forward, and it probably would have worked. So even Cam could have made a decision that even though the play got blown up, it might have still worked anyway, which is part of the reason you make that call, because it gives Cam Newton some choices. And even though he didn't make the right choice on that play, they would not have been in the game without him. So hats off to him. See, I go on and on. First of all, because the Patriots are so fascinating, and I don't think the Raiders defense is that good, by the way. So I think the Patriots are going to be able to do what they want, which means Julian Edelman, career high, Cease, in yards. The Patriots upgraded their quarterback and saved money in the process. There, I said it. Come at me. And it's a 43-year-old Tom Brady that he's better than. James White, again, heart goes out to him. Does he get more targets on his return? N'Keal Harry, the possession receiver. Demir Bird, maybe a big play receiver. I think by either one could come through as what the heck flex here.
Oh, yeah.
This is a clash, though. I think this is going to be a tremendous, tremendous game in the rematch of the Tuck Rule.
I love how you're like, just give me a moment, and then you rant for 5 minutes. That's awesome, dude.
That's a moment for me.
That is. That is. And you know, we will note, and by the way, don't invite rowdy Patriots fans in here. Remember that time when the chat room was filled with like a bunch of chowdas who were mad at you because you said
I said that Brady isn't a top 5 quarterback.
Oh God. Anyway, but you look at the struggles, and again, talking to someone in the know around Tampa, and just, you know, how Brady's struggling with picking up what Arians wants to do. And then Cam comes in and McDaniels works with him to do what he does and be amoebic, you know, like, what do you like? Let's do that. It's pretty simple, but so many people don't understand that.
Yeah.
So Josh McDaniels doing himself some favors here as well.
Yeah.
With what he's getting out from Cam. Either way, couple games left here. Part 1 of the week 3 preview here on the Audible. San Francisco against the Giants, and two teams ravaged by injuries last week. Get a face this week. So Nick Mullins at quarterback. All right. Jet McKinnon at running back. Cool. Probably Ayuk.
Yeah.
And then there's Jordan Reed. Like, okay, so we've got some injury situations to monitor and to watch here for both sides, Bloom. And the San Francisco side has some more interesting characters.
You think maybe San Francisco wants to find another field to play this game on? It's interesting the way the schedule makers set it up, so they're going to play on this MetLife Field 2 weeks in a row after they lost Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas to ACLs, and they lost Raheem Mostert, and they lost Jimmy Garoppolo. Not only the ACLs, I think, maybe have to do with the surface. I'm just speculating groundlessly. I made a word out of that, speculatively. Nick Mullins, he's going to keep the offense afloat, but you're going to play George Kittle, and if Kittle's out, Reed, and that's it. Maybe Kendrick Bourne. He was looking to Kendrick Bourne if you're looking for what the heck flex here. Like you said, some Ayuk. They're going to work in Mohamed Sanu. Kyle Shanahan certainly knows what he can do. It's more about the backfield here. I think you might see Jeff Wilson get 20 carries in this game and the goal line carries, and he's a fine what the heck flex in this one. As the Giants,
Oh, yeah.
Their run defense is a little easier to beat than the Jets' defense, at least up the gut. But I like McKinnon in the big plays, and I won't be surprised if they limit McKinnon to 12 touches, 15 touches in this game. But I would hope that you're looking at 4, 5, 6 receptions and some of those draw delays like he did to break those big runs against the Jets. So conserve him, but get his explosives out there. He looks as good as he's looked at any point in his career, which is really fun to see. The Giants' defense did rally against the Bears. It was the Bears.
Yeah.
After the Steelers kind of did what they want. But, San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo was really choppy in week 1. Week 2, they did enough against the Jets. It's the Jets, so I don't know. They're playing with some backups here, offensive line woes. San Francisco is definitely in do enough to win mode, and maybe against the Giants, even with Mullins, they'll be able to do that.
Jeffrey Wilson's going to out-touch Jet McKinnon.
Right.
That's the way they'll structure it. Now, McKinnon, with those big plays, could produce more from a fantasy perspective, but don't be surprised and don't sleep on Jeffrey Wilson. So let's talk about the Giants side. Sleep on Devontae Freeman?
Yeah.
Okay, first off, who's healthy and what can they do this week against the 49ers, who their defense, we talk about offensive stuff that's been lost. Oh, the defensive stuff. My God.
Yeah, they already lost Richard Sherman in week 1. Now they don't have D Ford, no timeline for his return from a neck issue. Never like to hear that.
No.
You also have, of course, Bosa and Thomas out. So, Ziggy Ansah, welcome to the 49ers. Maybe getting snaps right away here against the Giants, but the Giants have their own problems. No Saquon Barkley, no Sterling Shepard. He's been put on IR for that toe issue. So, Daniel Jones, bless his heart, he is hanging in there and making the throws. And San Francisco's defense isn't as scary as they looked when the season started. And we saw that Pittsburgh, Chicago, San Francisco trio to open. Daniel Jones is still probably only at best low-end quarterback to superflex material, but with upside. Stay away from the backfield. And sure, we're doing fact-finding here, but really we're just doing fact-finding of who to laugh at the hardest for spending their money on a Giants back. I mean, that's really why. Oh, you spent how much on Wayne Gallman? Oh, that's really the only reason we're going to see the split here. I don't think there's much in terms of fantasy. There is something in the passing game here, though, with Barkley and Shepard out. Now, you've narrowed that target tree. Slayton gives you the upside. I think Slayton's clearly the best play out of the two receivers, but Tate gives you the floor. And then Ingram, and you're going to play Ingram. Everything is set up for him to have a big week. You might see more Caden Smith in this one. Just remember him if Ingram goes down. And again, Will Fuller reminded us that those players that you asked that question about, eventually they go down. So, the Giants still playing with a ton of pride. They're not rolling over like Minnesota is. San Francisco, with their designs to go back to the Super Bowl, right now they're just, again, trying to survive week to week until they get everybody back on board because, again, this NFC, they might have to fight the other teams in their division just to get a playoff spot. In some ways, the NFC West potentially having 4 of the best 7 or 8 teams in the NFC could make it so that a deserving team misses out because they have to play 6 games against each other. So you got to win the games like the one against the Giants.
Final game we're going to talk about, part 1 of the Week 3 preview here on the Audible, Cincinnati at Philadelphia. And we've said it before, mainly on the recap shows, Bloom, like if Cincinnati just let it fly, just get into that mode. And then I think of the Eagles, I'm like, well, are they even going to get in that mode or are they going to get in control of the game? And Joe Mixon's fantasy GMs are like, can he do some more, please? So many people that I've interacted with are like, am I giving up on Joe Mixon? It's like, no, this is the type of game where Burrow will be muted because they might control this one against Philadelphia. Poor Jason Wood. Oh, yeah. Our man, our Eagles fan. The Bengals could control this one on the ground with Mixon.
Yeah, I'd stick with Mixon. I mean, look, the Mixon, if 10-12 is your floor, you know what he can do as a ceiling. What you hope is that the Bengals coaches see what we see, which is Giovanni Bernard is past his prime, and Mixon's a perfectly good passing down back. He can play every mode. You just paid him. Come on, use him. Stick with him, though. With Joe Burrow, I think what you want to see is more pace, more tempo, more no huddle, so that he gets in his own rhythm, because the offensive line's not going to allow him to get in a rhythm otherwise. And with Burrow, the numbers are going to come, partially because the defense is going to help the numbers come, partially because you have a Philadelphia defense that everything looked easy against them by the Rams. Remember, they gave up, 27 points to Washington. Some of that was off of turnovers, but we know Washington's not a good offense, all right? Things should work for the Cincinnati offense this week. Things should work for Burrow. You just don't want him to get hurt, just because he's not going to preserve himself. And then you have among these receivers, A.J. Green. A.J. Green, probably going to see Darius Slay. A.J. Green is in that wait until he goes off on your bench and be happy that you have him because now you know you can use him category. But what that does mean is you like Tyler Boyd. And then you're watching, not just because of A.J. Green and potential for injury. I mean, I love A.J. Green, but every time he hits the turf, I think, is he going to get up? Right. Every time. Like, your intuition just knows that he's on thin ice right now while he's reconditioning, getting back into it. So Mike Thomas, the other Mike Thomas, scored last week. T. Higgins, maybe it's him, as a third receiver because John Ross is falling out of favor. Auden Tate, healthy scratch. They want to trade him, free him. Maybe they play him. But there's opportunity for somebody other than Boyd to be fantasy relevant in this pass offense, with Burrow likely having a high volume all year, 61 passes last week. Who is it going to be? So we're watching for that. It was going to be C.J. Uzomah. We pour one out for him. Man, Drew Campbell looks like a blocking tight end out there. You know, and blocking tight ends can catch a lot of passes, but for like 5 yards a catch. So probably he's not the guy. But I think this could be an offensive game. This could be one of those games for DFS. Maybe you double stack it, because if you think the defense is just let these quarterbacks throw, then the numbers will come.
Mm-hmm. That's true. By the way, since we don't get to watch Cortland Sutton, we get to watch T. Higgins, though.
Yeah.
T. Higgins reminds me so much of Cortland. So speaking of pouring one out, Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Okay, Eagles. Very speaking of thin ice here for the Eagles and what they're going to do and what their future holds. And we talked last week about the magic being gone. It is Cincinnati. Their defense is atrocious. Baker the Baby Maker was rejuvenated. Okay, what happens with Carson Wentz this week? And then what's the trickle-down effect for all the other assets? Is it more than just, is it Goddard week or an Ertz week? Is it more than that this week because of the opponent? And because, well, honestly, Bloom, the Eagles need it bad.
Yeah, maybe. We can't really take much out of how the Chargers played with Tyrod Taylor in week 1 against the Bengals, but we certainly all saw last Thursday night that everything the Browns did worked. So you have to think more of what the Eagles do will work. Ertz and Goddard should both be in the lineup, and you would think the passing game should go through them. But Deshaun Jackson and Jalen Reagor, why not Jalen Reagor? Because we've seen some deep balls, we've seen some short stuff to allow him to use his run after catch ability. So against this defense, this is a prime moment for him to have his breakthrough game. And then, of course, you have Miles Sanders. And lost in how atrocious the team played, Miles Sanders was used like a true lead back. 20 touches. He could have had a big game. Remember, he was stopped at the 1, then Wentz got a sneak. He also got a touch on a 2-point conversion. He didn't convert. See, he could have had a 25, 30-point game in a loss, in a blowout loss. That's usually the hallmark of a true top 5 overall pick fantasy running back. If you can have a big game when your team's getting blown out, then you're going to be there for teams every week. So I think that his performance is being understated a little bit. But the main thing, I think this could be a big Ertz get-right game. And this has to be a get-rights game for Wentz. If Wentz doesn't do it in this, then you're not going to really roster him if he can't do it against Cincinnati. And if the Eagles can't do it against Cincinnati, we can probably really write them off for the rest of the year.
And that is a wrap for part 1 of the week 3 preview here on the Audible. Everyone, thanks for chiming in with us. Like, comment, share, subscribe, do all those YouTube things. Check us out on Apple Music. Check us out on Spotify. Thank you guys for listening to the show. And thank you guys for watching the show and helping grow the channel. Make sure you, so many hoops, ring the bell for notifications, then turn on notifications, and then make sure you check it. Like, oh, okay, for the love of God, just thanks. We're doing what is it, like 7 shows a week, 8 shows a week, whatever it is.
Too many.
Yeah, it's football season, so we're here for you. Check us out. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all those good things. So he's Sigmund Bloom. I'm Cecil Lammey. We are the Audible. Everyone out there, stay tuned and stay frosty.